Prolific composer Philip Glass, whose works include operas, dances, film scores, and choral pieces, is known as the man who put musical minimalism on the map. As he prepares for a revival of his first opera, Einstein on the Beach, he joins us now, and we are pleased to have him here. Tell me how you feel about the revival of Einstein on the Beach. What, at the Brooklyn Academy?
Yes, that's right. It'll be, band, we're starting there, I think the 19th.
Yeah.
It's a piece that is always exciting to do.
Yeah.
It's a piece that, for some reason, has always stayed very fresh and very young. We get older and the piece stays young.
Yeah. And why is that, you think?
I'm not really sure. I think it was when Bob Wilson and I got together on this in '75 or '74. It was it's something that came very naturally to us. It was very spontaneous. We were working out of a kind of a cultural milieu that was very strong and very vital, and a lot of it just stuck with Einstein, and you can still feel it.
Are you doing anything different?
Not much in terms of the music. Bob's relit it somewhat, has gotten, I think the people who saw it in '84 or '76 will definitely recognize the same place. Lucinda Childs is still there, Cheryl Sutton is still there. There's a different violinist this time. Craig Fulkerson is playing the part of Einstein, playing the violin.
Yeah.
But the ensemble that played, and Michael Reason, who's the music director, they're the same guys. They're different singers. But it'll look and sound pretty much the same. But my feeling is every time we do it, we get better at it. We've got the music down better now. The lighting is more refined. It's. I think when we first did it in '76, I think the first night we did it in Avignon in 1976, I think it probably was a terrible mess. Yeah. Only nobody knew it.
How'd the French like it?
They loved it. And we loved it too. No, the thing is that in 1976, no one knew what it was. The first night we did it, you have to remember, that was the first night that we ever even got through the piece without stopping. We never had a dress rehearsal. We never got through a dress rehearsal. The first night was the first night that we got to see it. And since then, we've actually learned how to do the piece.
Now, was Ravi Shankar there then? I mean, I know he's a friend of yours and he's an influence on you.
Yeah, he wasn't there for that. He's seen some of my pieces, but he wasn't there for that one.
He's had an influence on your life.
Oh, he had a big impact on me.
In what way?
Well, in 1965, I was finishing my my studies with Nadia Boulanger in Paris. And I, just by accident, I got a job being his assistant on a film score. And in 1965, you have to remember that was before the Beatles had gone to India.
Right.
So no one knew about all this wonderful music. That's really how we got to know about, I mean, the general public. And most of us really got to know about music, non-Western classical music. Yeah. And when I was at Juilliard, we never studied that music. No one knew anything about it. Yeah. So suddenly I was thrown into this situation. I had to notate.
And what did it say to you?
Well, first of all, I was astonished. I was astonished by it because I didn't, at that point, I had been studying music for probably about 18 years. And here was something that I knew nothing about, and it was completely interesting and absorbing and exciting, and I didn't know the first thing about it. Yeah. And that led to trips to India, that led to my studying with Ala Raka, his tabla player. It led to a long session. Finally, actually, a few years ago, I did a record with Ravi, a record called Passages, and we still are in touch with each other. So it's been a lifetime association for me, but it really is what made me start thinking about another way that we could have another kind of classical music in America, or in Europe for that matter, that we began to think about world music, which is a word that we hear a lot about now, but in 1965 or 1966, world music simply wasn't on the map yet. And that was when it really began for me.
Yeah. Why do you... minimalism is an inadequate term to describe the music in your judgment, correct? Well,
I think it was a historical term, and that moment of history probably ended in 1975. But the word has hung on.
Yeah. And is Einstein on the Beach the best representation of what
you
think the word meant historically?
I think it was kind of both the summation of it in a way and the beginning of something else. Yeah. Because the thing about minimalism is we used to say that less is more. That was the idea of minimalism. Right. But with theater, more is more. Theater is about putting things together. It's about adding things and coming up with something that's more than the sum of its parts.
More is more, meaning?
Meaning that for me, theater was about collaboration. It was about putting together. It wasn't about reducing things. It was about adding things together. It was about putting together dance and sometimes words, sometimes singing.
Is that what appeals to you about opera so much?
Yes.
That you get
It's finally it is the complete art form. It's the opportunity that we have not only to do our best work, but to work with the best people in other arts.
The finest practitioners of...
It can be, yeah. And that's when, and in our best moments, we see it all coming together. This was, of course, the dream that Wagner had in the 19th century, and we've all had that. Everyone's had the dream since then. And anyone who's had the experience of I just recently had a piece at the Met, the Voice, and that was a moment when everything, it was one of those moments.
Did they commission?
That was a commission.
Yeah.
Einstein was there in '76, but it was really invited as we trucked it in.
But this was commissioned by the Met.
This was commissioned by the Met. Yeah. And all the people that worked on it, David Henry Hwang or Bob Israel or David Peltney or Gwenny Sachs and Dunya Ramakova, all the various persons, we all were doing our work, and it was one of those magical times when everything just seemed to come together. It doesn't always happen. It also happened to happen with Einstein.
Yeah. How do you explain when it happens? I mean, do you understand what makes it happen?
We knew.
You do it all the time.
We do it all the time, and it's wonderful when it does, because it just makes there's a real joy to working that way. There's a wonderful joy to working that way.
What's the best for you? I mean, when do you say it can't get better than this for me? What is the act of creation that gives you the most? That's
a hard question to answer, but I would say that the most exciting time, which is maybe kind of as close as I can get to that, is in the last few days of the rehearsal when you finally see it coming together. With Einstein, that would have been in the last week after having worked on the piece for 2 years, and finally, or with The Voice, the same thing, and that last week when finally it actually starts to click. That was true with Satyagraha too, the opera I did about Gandhi. And I think the most exciting moment is in the last week when finally what was imagination, what was on paper, what was just, it finally, you say, my God, the thing's going to work. It's going to really happen.
The Voyage, you also did. You did the music for The Brief History of Time. Stephen Hawking, Earl Morris made that film. How was that different from The Voyage?
It's very different. Film is not a collaborative medium.
Yeah.
And opera is. A film belongs to the filmmaker. There's no doubt about that.
You're just simply accentuating his work.
You're working in his. You're working in his. That's his world that you're working in.
Why do you do it?
In the case of Earl, because he's a brilliant filmmaker, and I love the work.
Yeah. But also, you have enormous admiration for scientists and for Hawking.
I've had a big interest in science, and I've always been attracted to it. But the first one I did with Earl, the Thin Blue Line.
You did that as well.
Yeah, I did that. And he's a genius filmmaker who is completely eccentric in the way he works, and I wouldn't put up with the way he treated me for anybody else. I mean, I had to
How
go
does
back.
he treat you?
Well, I had to write the first cue. The first thing that you heard in Brief History of Time, I had to write it 8 times.
And he kept saying, "Glass, this is no good."
That's not no good. He said, "Let's try something else."
Yeah, we can do better.
He
or
didn't
just
say that.
Let's just try again.
He said, "I know there's something else." I remember when we were doing that. We finished the film. We mixed the film. I went down to Houston. I was working on an opera there, making the representative for Planet 8, which I'd done with Doris Lessing.
Right.
And I thought that film was done, and Earl called on the phone. He said, "I want to redo one of the cues." I said, "Earl, I'm rehearsing another opera. I can't do it." He showed up. He was at my hotel.
In 24 hours or something.
He was there, and he said, "I'm going to stay here until you rewrite this cue." And I said, "Well, get yourself a reservation on the plane tomorrow. I'll have some music for you in the morning," because I knew
There's no way you had to do it.
Had to do it.
Yeah. But that's what you admire about him is this.
Well, it's not just the tenacious, but he had a real vision. And but this is what in film you're working in somebody else's vision very often. That wasn't so true with Koyaanisqatsi and Poakatsi, where with Godfrey Reggio.
Yeah.
Those are the films that are just the images and music. We really worked together, and we had a long period. We have long work periods together, 2 or 3 years together, and that's very collaborative. But generally, film is not a collaborative medium. With Paul Schrader, with Mishima, the same.
You did the music for Mishima?
Yeah, and that was a brilliant film. But again, I'm working in, that's Paul's world, and that's not my world.
Yeah. The fascination with scientists, what is it? I mean, is it somehow you consider them...
I think I was a frustrated scientist. When I was a kid, I think that's what I mostly admired.
Did you have a gift for it?
No, I didn't, and that's why I didn't do it.
Yeah.
I had a gift for music, and I think I made the right choice.
And what was it that indicated you had a gift for music?
I'm not sure. Well, first of all, there was a deep love of it that began when I was very young. I mean, I learned about music from my father. I went to music school when I was a little boy.
You grew up in Baltimore, did you?
Baltimore, yeah.
And then went on to Juilliard.
University of Chicago, Juilliard, Paris, and so forth. But I admired science, and when I was at the University of Chicago, I even took classes in mathematics and physics. But I discovered right away that I really didn't have any talent.
I got 30 seconds left. I want to get this in. The Low Symphony.
Yeah.
And is that David?
That was based on a record of David Bowie and Brian Eno. That was done in '76, and it was a kind of a landmark piece. It was a kind of an art rock record that really pointed to a whole new direction, which never really actually came. That record pointed to a direction that was never really fulfilled in a way. But I remember hearing that record in 1977 and thinking, gee, I could do something with this music. And
one last question.
Yeah.
What are you working on now as we speak?
I'm working on Orphée, an opera based on the film by Cocteau. And it will open in American Repertory Theater in Boston. I made an adaptation for the stage. And the first time, I think, when someone has taken a movie and made it into an opera.
Great to have you here. Thank you.
Nice to see you again.
Pleasure. Philip Glass. Thank you for joining us tonight. Tomorrow night, show pioneer and broadcast veteran Steve Allen will be here. Also, award-winning McNeil-era reporter Charlene Hunter-Gault. All of that tomorrow night. I thank you for joining us tonight on Veterans Day. Our thoughts go out to all the families of veterans who have given their life for this country, and we thank you for sharing tonight with us. See you tomorrow night.